Hello and welcome to the video. Now this is a video for all of you that have sent me questions asking how long does this thing fly for. This is the Jumper Xiake800. I'm shaking my head because I'm still not sure how to say that. Thank you to all of you again that has sent me videos of Chinese people saying it. I just think they should have chosen a much better name. So at this point, I'm kind of taking the mickey out of it a little bit. Now this is a phone version of something called the Mini Hawk project. Mini Hawk project is a 3D printable version of this. Jumper have done quite a bit of work actually and turned this into a foam model. Now this is a VTOL, so it can both take off and land vertically as well as fly about. Now there is room inside here for a 2200 4S battery, which is what I'm flying it on. I'm flying it on one of these things here. These are the endurance packs, so they pack an awful lot of capacity into the same size as what historically you would have got kind of 1300 milliamp hour pack in. Now I've flown this an awful lot more now, so I think I can kind of talk to what kind of flying time you can expect. Now the thing is here is that hovering is pulling anywhere between 10.5 to 13 amps depending on whether or not you're yawing about, because as you yaw these motors move and then it has to produce enough thrust to keep it in the air but also then to have thrust to actually yaw it. So it's about 12 amps so about 4 amps each for the 4 motors to have it in the hover. Obviously if you're ascending, uses a little bit more. The other thing then is in forward flight, depending on the throttle, and I had a couple of questions on this, the throttle directly controls the speed of the motors. It's fly-by-wire A, so it isn't set to a cruise like it is in things like the OMP Hobby ZMO VTOL. It can be anything between 3, 4 and 5 amps depending on how hard you're pushing it. So I would say probably about 4 amps is what you're getting. Now I had this flight recently where I hovered for 30 seconds, flew around in forward flight for 2 minutes 20 and then was in VTOL again for just under a minute. So that means in total I was in the air for about 4 minutes, but a big chunk of that was in the hover, which uses an awful lot more battery. And I got back and the battery from that particular flight was about 76%. So still an awful lot to go at. Now this of course is in very cold conditions here. The battery performance isn't anywhere near as good, but gives you an idea of the kind of flight times you can expect. I would easily be happy with this as long as I kept the VTOL stages reasonably short and sweet. About 10-15 minutes maximum maybe. Jumper claim you can get a little bit longer, but that really depends on how long you spend in the hover and how aggressive you are with the throttle in fixed wing mode. Now interestingly, if you want to kind of figure this out for the batteries that you have, knowing that it hovers at 12 amps and flies in forward flight at 4 amps average, we can do some maths to figure out for whichever battery how long that's going to last. So for those of you that used to sit at school and tell your maths teacher that you were never ever going to use any algebra or mathematics in life, this next bit probably isn't for you. However, for those of you that are watching this that may be at school, this is a great example of one of those situations where, you know what, you are going to use some of that stuff that you might think is a complete waste of time right now. So let's use the numbers that I've already talked about and do a theoretical calculation of how long that 2200 battery should last. Now again, it's about 12 amps in hovering and about 4 amps-ish in forward flight. Now the other big thing we need to know is how much of the capacity in the battery is available for us to use to fly. Now again, this is a 2200 milliamp hour pack. Usable capacity is 80%, so that's about 1760 milliamp hours. Now let's assume that we spend about 2 minutes in total hovering per flight. Taking off, in my experience here, you tend to kind of hover it, make sure it's okay, and then you on with the FPV goggles, ascend reasonably quickly up to 100 meters, do your transition and away you go. It's the transition back from forward flight to hovering that tends to overshoot, so you spend a little bit more time getting it back to land at your feet. So let's say it's 2 minutes in total. So we are going to pull 12 amps for 2 minutes. So we are going to pull 24 amp minutes, because we've just multiplied amps by minutes. Now, if we divide that by 60, then we actually get 0.4 amp hours, because there's 60 minutes in an hour, or that's 400 milliamp hours. So in that 2 minutes of hovering, we're going to use quite a chunk of battery. We're going to use about 400 milliamp hours. Now, that then means that the rest of the battery should be available for us to fly around in forward flight. So we need to figure out what's left. So if we take away that 400 milliamp hours from the capacity of the battery, which is 1,760 milliamp hours, we get 1,360 milliamp hours remaining that we can use to fly around. So if we are averaging about 4 amps in that forward flight, then if we divide the 1360 milliamp hours that we still have left in the pack by the 4000 milliamps, because that's what 4 amps is as milliamps, then it works out as 0.34 hours. Or if we multiply 0.34 hours by 60, it gives us about 20 minutes. So total flight time would be 2 minutes in the hover plus the 20 minutes in forward flight. So theoretical maximum for this battery is 22 minutes. So there we have it. Theoretically, the batteries that I'm using here should last 22 minutes, and maybe on a warm day where everything is working fantastically well, that is probably where I would aim for. However, for safety, particularly now in the winter, I think 12-15 minutes in forward flight with as short an ascent and descent as I possibly get is probably where I'm going to feel safe until at least the ground starts to soften up anyway. So for those of you that were interested in this, hopefully that answers it a little bit, and also gives you a little bit of the maths, how you use that stuff that you learnt at school that you never thought you're going to ever use again, to figure out if you have a particular size battery, how you can figure out roughly what this is going to last at. The big numbers, of course, are the fact that hovering is about 12 amps, forward flight is about 4 amps, and you can work out the rest if you know your battery. Thank you for spending your time today watching that video. You can find me in all the usual places on social media, and if you're trying to learn about a subject, then check out the playlist. All of my videos are organized into easy to follow playlists that, if you're trying to learn a topic, will take you from the basics right the way through to some pretty advanced stuff.